The Oklahoma State University Debate Club is a nonpartisan organization, and the contents of this episode do not reflect the ideas, positions, or opinions of the Oklahoma State University Debate Club or its members. Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of the OSU Debate Club podcast. My name is J.R. Stitt Bethune. I am now the vice president of the Oklahoma State University Debate Club. And I am here today with our former president, Mr. Josh Wilson.
Hello.
And our former vice president, Jason Chen.
What's up?
And our current treasurer, Sathwe Kimana.
Hello.
Okay. So I know this episode we don't really know what we're going to talk about. I kind of want to talk about the Pope and President Trump. As of recording, it is April 15th, 2026. And for those who don't know, President Trump, I believe Sunday night, put out a lengthy Truth Social post going after Pope Leo the 14th, and then posted a picture of himself that I think we'd agree, for the most part, depicted him as Jesus.
Nah, he was a doctor.
That's definitely a Red Cross doctor. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But
as you guys can clearly tell, JR's not in the medical field. He obviously doesn't know what he's talking about.
Like, I'm a Catholic, so obviously I hold the Pope to be the head of the church on earth and kind of the mediator between God and us here on the earth. And knowing Jason is agnostic, Sath is agnostic, and Josh, what are you?
Is a flaming Protestant.
Okay, we'll call it a flaming
JR,
Protestant.
did you just
General
assume
Baptist.
our religious beliefs?
How dare you, sir?
I mean, that would be accurate, would it not, for all of y'all?
Yes.
Yes. So I guess I just want to talk about the relationship, the ideal relationship between church and state.
He said, let's unpack a whole century's worth
But,
of
okay,
just
okay.
constitutional law into a podcast.
Hold up, JR.
But
Let's see
more
what you want to
specific,
say.
maybe we can make it the Pope and state or states. On what we think that should be, because I think personally, I think any president shouldn't be going after the Pope like that. I think I read some news article earlier this week arguing that Trump didn't even go after, not Trump, like Hitler and Mussolini didn't even go after the Pope of their time, which
is that true?
Yeah, so I think there is some historical precedent for it in the sense that, and I'm clearly quoting Michael Knowles here, who talked about in one of his podcasts, I think last week, how the popes in the past have sent letters to the Byzantine emperor who was very upset about how he hadn't acknowledged him, or in some sense or the other, and the Byzantine emperor wasn't very happy with the Pope, and they went back and forth, but they kind of delineated between two different planes, which is like the spiritual and then the powers of government, the political, the policy. And there's kind of like the Pope or a pastor, they focus on the spiritual, which sometimes overlaps with some of the political. However, there's certain powers or certain actions that are given to the government to take care of. Like the Pontiff of Rome doesn't necessarily have an executioner anymore. However, if somebody does commit a crime, the Italian government would probably have their enforcers take that person away to jail and would probably deal with them accordingly. However, the Pope does still condemn sin and breaking the law. So it kind of overlaps, but I think that the general consensus is it's okay to criticize the Pope as he's not exactly a policy expert. However, it should be done in a respectful manner, and it shouldn't be in a Truth Social post that is like pages long, criticizing him and saying that he just loves crime. So
that's my, like, I don't understand. To me, to my knowledge, Pope Leo has said nothing inherently political in this whole thing. Like the U.S. Israel-Iran war, Pope Leo has consistently advocated for peace in the Middle East, and that to me seems to be the track record of the papacy, really, for as long as I can remember, and from everything I've read before I was born, probably a century back at least. The idea of peace in the Middle East and or the world is not unique to Pope Leo, and to my knowledge, Pope Leo hasn't said, "Oh, Donald Trump is a bad president. His policies suck," or something. He's just said, we need peace, essentially. We want peace. We need peace. Come to a peaceful diplomatic solution.
Yeah, I think what Trump should have done, I think a better way of going about the situation, saying, hey, it is a Catholic concept that there is a justified war, and we think that this is a justifiable war in a sense that if Iran had a nuclear weapon and was in firing distance of the Vatican, it kind of is... There's a responsibility for the global hegemony, which is the U.S., the only power that is there's no multipolarity in the global environment at the certain instant.
I don't agree with that.
Be as it may, as the kind of global police that the U.S. has acted as in the past, it's only incumbent upon them to make sure that Iran doesn't have the capabilities to fire missiles at the papal city, which is kind of home to the leader of is a spiritual leader, home to the spiritual leader of many Americans today. So they kind of had a...
I would argue the world is multipolar now, and I've read some stuff for some of my political science courses that would argue that at minimum we're in a bipolar world with China now.
If you look at like the GDP ratios and the different, like how it stands on economics and how it stands on armed forces, they're climbing. China is climbing. However, we're not in a multipolar system yet. We're not like it where we were like with
Can you guys
USSR.
elaborate on the definition of multipolar?
Yeah. So whenever there's like two equal powers within a
two would be bipolar. So the Cold War was a bipolar environment because you had the U.S. on one side and the Soviet Union on the other.
Right.
Multipolar would be like
3 or more.
Correct.
So like the kind of system of Europe with like Britain and France and Prussia and Russia and that dynamic, like back in the early 1800s, that would be a multipolar world.
So what's the polarity of modern day? What do you guys think?
As I was saying, we're way ahead of China. I think Germany's in second place when it comes to economy. Germany and Japan, and then China is somewhere within that realm of things. But when it comes to military capacity and GDP and the rest of it, I think that the U.S. is far ahead, but the other nations are climbing and climbing fast. However, we're not to the level of bipolarity and multipolarity yet, in my opinion. But that remains to be seen.
Why? I don't know what specific numbers you're quoting on GDP there. I find it hard to believe that Germany is economically outproducing China or India, for that matter. What?
Well, that's how people view.
Yeah. So for those listening, Seth is pulling up on the screen we have here in the studio a chart showing the share of citizens from selected countries regarding the following as the world's leading economic power. And so, for example, from Germany, 53% of Germans would say that China is the world's leading economic power. And pretty much everybody but Mexico, Japan, and South Korea in this chart would have China as the leading economic power. Most
economic power. Yeah, economic.
Yeah, compared to the United States, to be clear. The scary thing about China to me, as far as polarity, is that China is very actively, in my opinion, kind of almost buying foreign support, like through its One Belt, One Road initiative. And like we've seen when it comes to Taiwan, like China go to third world countries and say, stop, don't recognize Taiwan, and we're going to give you a bunch of economic aid or, favorable loan terms or something like that. It's very clear to me China wants to be in a bipolar world short term. And if you look at what they're buying militarily, long term, I think the plan is unipolar, centered on China. I'm not really sure how possible that would be considering China's demographic problems, but
so as it stands with, according to the IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, which is kind of the gold standard on a lot of this, is like the United States in GDP comes first, and then, of course, you're right, it is China, trailed by Germany and Japan. However, China is about 9. Okay.
That's about 14 to 15.
We're about 11,000 value points ahead, per the IMF. But per capita, it's a lot different.
You can look at per capita, the population difference.
yeah, because China's population is so big.
China is way different of a country to really compare
Bit.
to America.
Yeah, I mean, Germany and Japan certainly are significant economically, but not like China's the world's factory.
China's the world's factory, but I don't think China has as much military power as we might think they do. I think.
Why not?
I think China's a bit of a paper tiger on military power. I think so. I think first of all, America has way more reach and extension in terms of military bases across the world.
Yeah,
And then obviously we have more military assets. And I think China's geography and its demographics just doesn't line up to make it as powerful as they say it is. I don't think the Chinese culture isn't a culture of war. And I don't think the Chinese will be as prepared for war. They'll be prepared for economic war for sure. But military is a different situation.
I do think that we are doing a lot of good damage to the China economy right now, seeing that the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and I think it's around 25% of China's oil supply comes from the Strait of Hormuz.
it also helps that we cut off the flow from Venezuela to China, and then also I think we signed a mutual defense pact with either Malaysia or Indonesia earlier this week. That's going to allow us access to the Straits of Malacca, and a lot of Chinese oil passes through there as well, from other parts of the world through the straits.
I love how we immediately jump from church and state to China. Just the jump in conversation. But
I think China is a potent military threat. Like if China invaded Taiwan tomorrow, would the United States be prepared to fully take on China militarily?
I'm going to say no because of economic leverage, aka TSMC, chips and stuff. Or sorry.
What I know TSMC's on Taiwan, but what does that have to do with our military squaring up with China's?
Isn't the threat of destruction?
That's the whole point of Taiwan. But I'm saying if China invaded tomorrow, could the U.S. square up against China's military in Taiwan? And I'm not so sure it could. If we defended Taiwan,
okay, what makes you say that from a military strategy?
I'm not sure we can project enough power in the southern Pacific, and the South China Sea. If that's the right sea, I'd have to check my maps, but I'm not sure we can project enough power there to offset how close it is to China. And China, I think, has by number, larger navy than we do right now. And in like a Taiwan conflict, China can throw everything it has at Taiwan, and we've got a technically smaller fleet by number.
I don't think we would know either way what China's numbers are. They've kind of been secretive and lying about most of their stuff for a long time.
You know, there's a conspiracy theory saying China's population isn't what they claim. They think it's like, they claim it's 1 point something billion. But I was looking into this, and there are theories saying it might actually be like 500 million, 800 million. And the reason's because the counties would project higher numbers, you know, for tax reasons and trying to attract foreign markets.
That's like I'm taking a counterterrorism class with Dr. Nemeth. And within that class, one of the things we talk about is like terrorism within like more authoritarian countries, and they were often report there's lower numbers. However, you can't really prove it since they censor the media and they kind of keep that stuff under the rug because they want to project power. However, in like a democracy like the U.S., it's kind of harder to do that when you have like a million independent journalists running around looking at Leering centers or whatever it might be. So I think that if China, being an authoritarian state, wants to decide they don't want to talk about their military power as is because they want to project military power, I think they would be able to do so, and we would have no knowledge to contradict that.
So if China's really 500 million,
it's not. That's a conspiracy theory. We don't know. But
like if it is,
look, there's logical assumptions. Like I mean, it's like one child policy.
Like already that's
down.
Gonna have.
Right.
Like we're going to see the effects of that here in the next 20 years. We already are starting to see that, not just in China, but like the lack of births in South Korea and Japan.
Pretty much all of East Asia.
Yeah. And the West. Not to the extreme that China and South Korea and Japan have, but like if indeed their population is lower, I guess...
Okay,
that changes the whole calculus of the situation.
Obviously I'm from China, right?
Right.
And okay, my question to you guys is, you guys as Americans, why do you think there's a population issue in East Asia? What do you guys think the reason is?
Like socially?
Sure, culturally, whatever reason.
In China, I think it's because of the one-child policy. Because for decades in China, you had the Chinese government saying one child is the perfect number, and you had a culture that was very male-dominant. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in traditional Chinese culture, you want to have a son who's going to take care of you when you get old and can't take care of yourself anymore. And so the government was forcibly sterilizing people and forcibly aborting children. That's and ingraining this idea that only one child is necessary, if needed at all. Now, I think that's affecting China even now, because you can only change your story so much after you've said one child is perfect for 50 years or however long the one-child policy was in effect. You can't just switch to 2 or 3, because that undermines your government's credibility. In Japan and South Korea, I don't really have a good explanation. I'm not totally familiar with those cultures. I can say across the West more broadly, I think the advent of contraception and...
It's a Catholic coming out.
Yeah, okay. The proliferation of contraception, which is a bit of an oxymoron, has and kind of the adaptation of a sterilized mindset has contributed to falling birth rates. I think the lack of marriages in the West, and you can look at the numbers in Japan and China and South Korea as well and see that nobody's getting married there. That's going to cause you problems as well. And I think South Korea is actually trying to increase their marriage rate as a way to increase their birth rate. I may be wrong on that. But
Jason, you have more of an insider view. What's kind of your thoughts on it?
I want to make an interesting statement. I'm gonna say the reason in East Asia is because of the lack of God. I know, coming from someone who's quote unquote agnostic and not really religious, but here I'll explain why. I think East Asian culture is populated by materialism, and I think America is pretty much the same, but the difference is that America still has more religion and spiritualism that dominates overall culture than the materialism in East Asia.
What do you think
So-
started the
What I think started,
like the lack of God in China? Because I knew that used to be a pretty heavy Buddhist culture, right?
yes. So obviously in China it's the government, right? So JR is right about the one-child policy, and that has a lot to do with it. But what I mean by materialism is basically what happened in these countries is you have high population density, okay, and there's high levels of competition. All these countries essentially look to the West and the amount of like capital and wealth the West has, and they want to reach that level as fast as possible. And what happens is you create a culture of insane competition. And once again, everyone's living in the city, and so they're like, okay, well, here's a strategy. We're gonna have one child, and we're gonna put all of our resources on this one kid, and he's gonna study all day, nonstop, to get to the best college, so that he can get the best job, so he can make quote unquote Western levels of money. And that's basically what caused the insane pressure in children and families, and to succeed. And when you have that level of pressure, you just don't really focus on having family life.
Do you see any of that mirrored in American culture?
I would say no, not yet, but in the cities, yes.
I think they're
Mostly in the cities.
the difference in American culture is that there's not like children aren't necessarily driven or motivated by their parents to become the most studious student ever, to like make their family proud or something. There's no, I'm not an only child, but I don't feel like here in America all of the pressure is heaped on you.
Yeah.
And I'm not an only child, so maybe.
Well, I mean, the American culture is, you can still be ambitious. You can do whatever you want. It's freedom, right? It's a culture of freedom. You get to go chase after ambition, or you can not to. And it's, your parents basically say, it's up to you, man. It's like, go do whatever you want to do. And in China, or in East Asia, really, it's not that they say, hey, you can go do whatever you want to do. They say, no, you're not going to go study history at college. You're going to study medicine. Right, and the culture of
yeah,
is over.
and
So
then,
it's basically what it is. Yeah,
because then you're trapped into doing something you don't necessarily want to do at the bottom of your heart. And yeah, I forget where we got off on this.
Sweet. So you think materialism kind of started the decrease in the population of China?
East Asia in general.
Asia in
And yeah, it's I would say Japan and South Korea has it the worst, right? And Japan has it pretty bad, and China has it pretty bad. And I say materialism, specifically what I mean by that, it's the chasing of the pursuit of material wealth, and really, I guess that's about it. If you look at like South Korean culture, you look at their pop culture and stuff like that, it's all about trends, money, fashion, what the rich people are doing, and it's just that when you have that at a societal level, it becomes pure materialism.
Is that not what's going on here in the United
Well,
States?
that's
at
what I was
the
going to say.
societal
Is
level?
like, you know, like right now we are below replacement level in birth rates. I think a study came out just the other day. Is like even I think we're like a few points below like replacement rates at least.
Replacement rate is like 2.1. I think the U.S. is like 1.4 to 1.6, somewhere in that
Yeah,
range.
so we're way below. And my thoughts was like we have the least amount of people in church or that are claiming religion at this point in America than ever before.
In American history?
From my understanding in American history.
Okay, yes.
And you know, we were started as a Protestant nation, and from there, like, we've just decreased and decreased as we've evolved in our, not really evolved, but have progressed our thinking in spiritual ethics and stuff like that, or if God exists at all, as some would claim. And because of that, and because of materialistic pursuits, I think that it would kind of show a correlation between spiritualism and declining birth rates. You know, with the less amount of spiritualistic characteristics that you hold, the more that birth rates will decline.
I agree with Josh here.
I mean, I would argue without spiritual connection, you're just living a life of material. Like if there's no spiritual, there's just the material. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
why not just pursue the material fully? Yeah. It as really post World War II materialism has set in. Like religious erosion has indeed occurred, but it's not as bad in America as it is in Europe. Like from a birth rate perspective, like Europe is worse than us. Ironically, in the Catholic countries like Portugal, Italy, Spain, they're the worst birth rate wise, and I don't have a good explanation for that.
You guys said earlier, you know, the world might be multipolar or bipolar, right? You know, I think it's been unipolar since the end of World War II, and I think that unipolar is this materialism. Basically, it's the material system dominates everything.
I would argue it's since the end of the Cold War, but definitely around that time period.
Why?
Because World War II, you still had the USSR.
Yeah, but above. So you're saying above, like the United States, that there is this idea of materialism that is dominating
At a higher abstract level, yes. And I mean, you know, I think, okay, so my belief is, you know, I think we have nations, we have nation states, we have different countries that compete, quote unquote. But I think they're more, the borders and boundaries are much more blurry than people make it out to be, right? It's not like, oh, it's America versus China. No, it's more like transnational elites on top of everything. And then it's just groups of transnational elites doing whatever the heck they want to do, groups of power, and we're all just...
So are you like a global populist?
Yeah, that's what I think the world is. I mean, it doesn't mean I am, but it's how I view the world. I think, you know, like, I think Xi and Putin and, you know, American president probably, like, talks and respects each other and doesn't really want to go to war, but they have their own constituencies that they gotta essentially quell.
I would argue Putin doesn't really have a constituency.
Well, his constituency is quote unquote Russia.
Right, but like
the
he's
idea
not
of Russia.
I mean, considering the amount of fixing in Russian elections, I'm not sure he has a real like, regardless of what he does, his constituency, quote unquote, is still gonna quote unquote vote for him. Like, he doesn't really
His dominion.
Yeah, and I'm not.
You have leaders and they lead.
Xi Jinping in China is not directly accountable to the Chinese citizenry. Is he? Is he elected by the CCP?
Election in the CCP. That's a joke. That's funny.
It's like North Korea, wherever like Kim Jong Un gets
Maybe, well, I mean, yeah,
99.9% of the vote.
I mean, it might not be Xi. You know, obviously there's parties that counter each other in China, but it's the CCP, right? It's the group, the oligarchical group. And I mean, you know, and then there's one individual that stands out, but overall it's the oligarchical group.
So Xi's constituency would be the CCP oligarchs, as opposed to the Chinese people.
Yeah,
as
I
a
guess
whole.
basically. And then of course their quote unquote constituent dominion is the Chinese people, in which they put up this boundary they call China. And I think it's the same thing with Russia. And I think America is similar to a degree. But the difference about America is America also has billionaires, basically, business leaders, oligarchs, groups of business leaders that outlast presidential term limits. And, you know, they have transnational power and they influence things. And so the world isn't, you know, it's not country versus country. And I mean, it hasn't been that way since, I don't know, World War II.
So
Since
then what the
J.D.
heck was the
Rockefeller.
Cold War about? Like I thought.
What was the Cold War about?
Yeah, like if it's just post World War II, the minions versus the transnational elite, that doesn't make rational sense. Why U.S. versus USSR was such a hot issue and almost a hot war at many points.
But it never was hot. It was always cold, right?
Well, we were so oh shoot, I forget. As a history guy, this is sad, but I forget what the incident is called technically. But Russian nuclear detection was so bad that they detected incoming missiles from the U.S.
Oh, and they thought it was nukes, and then this one guy.
He said it's not nukes.
It was like the moon, wasn't it? It turns out to be like I don't know, like stars or something.
I don't know. I
think
know
it was like the
an
moon.
erroneous.
I don't know.
Pickup, and so I mean, if he had done his job, the world would be nuked probably 4 times over. What is this?
This is the 1983 Soviet nuclear false alarm incident.
Yeah, but it's not called that.
Cool fact. Did you know someone
Historically
proposed an idea for for them to inject like the trigger for nukes inside of like a close friend of like the president? And so whenever the president has to send nukes, the idea is that he's gonna have to like literally tear out the heart of his friend to like send the nukes.
Who came up with that idea?
I forgot. You gotta look it up, but someone did.
That's stupid.
And you know they're like, oh, you know, there's consequences.
So
to
not only
launching
do you
nukes.
have to nuke the world, you have to murder your friend. Yes, that makes sense. Not. What? That sounds like a U.S. government thing to come up with, though.
It is very.
Very Kantian.
So you guys still think? You guys think we're still in a multipolar?
No, I think we're unipolar.
I
don't
think
think
we're bipolar.
which
Or in a bipolar state of being. I mean, Josh just doesn't think China's relevant enough yet.
not yet. I mean, they're relevant, sure, but they're not to the level of the U.S.
I do agree with Josh. I think you know economically
Well,
they might be relevant.
But you don't have to be at the level of the U.S. to be bipolar. Or to have the world be in a bipolar state. Like, you can have 2 powers
Sorry,
that
they're
aren't
not
necessarily
relevant enough.
equal.
They're not relevant enough to be on the level of the U.S., so they're not really a threat in as great of a sense as a bipolar system would be to American security. I think right now we kind of outlevel them in military capacity, and we kind of show a lot of military power at the moment, especially after we went to Venezuela and just kidnapped their president. We've kind of got them locked down on the oil situation with Venezuela, Cuba, the Strait of Hormuz, and various other sites. I mean, it's just
We haven't. What have we done in Cuba? Aside from Marco Rubio being
I meant that
hailed
in the
as the
sense of,
soon-to-be
like,
premier.
as alongside of the sense of like military capacity, we've kind of incapacitated Cuba for the most part.
Seth, you wanna
They got
jump
a lot
in?
of their oil from Venezuela. So whenever we cut off their oil supply from Venezuela, they kind of crash. So what I'm saying is like our military strength and vigor is shown across the globe at the moment, and I don't think that China has shown that much prestige on the world stage as of yet to be seen as a threat from ourselves or others, and nor do they have the capacity to be seen as such. So,
how relevant do you think Russia is internationally now?
They're kind of quelled by the Ukrainian war and us sending a bunch of weaponry to the Ukrainians to fight our proxy war against them. So I don't think, like, yeah, they're relevant, but again, like, they're kind of preoccupied with the Ukrainian thing. So
if I could wave a magic wand and take away all of Russia's nukes, would they even be relevant anymore?
Nope. That's where they're better in militarily or in terms of defense.
It's just nukes?
Yeah. I think Russia outranks
Yeah.
America in terms of nukes or nuclear heads.
Yeah. But, like, I would argue Russia's only claim to fame is its nuclear arsenal. That's it. Like, they seem to be... China seems to be at least militarily competent.
Sure.
Russia...
competent, just not comparable.
To the U.S., yeah. But Russia just seems to be... Like, you probably should have won this a long time ago, and the only reason anybody's scared of you is you have nukes. Like, if you had to invade Europe or invade somebody else without nukes,
Yeah.
the Russian military, I think, would be useless.
Well, I think if we put, well, they still have oil and natural gas and stuff like that, so that kind of plays their part. And Germany refuses to-
Economically, that helps, but oil doesn't, make tanks go.
Sure, but I mean,
Well,
in
I
the sense
guess
Well,
oil
yeah, but
does
oil
make tanks go.
Yeah, oil
But-
produces money, and the money
Which
makes the tanks go.
kind of like runs their entire economy, is like
Yeah.
their different factories and so forth. If we had a bunch of like countries put sanctions on them, like had been requested by our leaders in the past, maybe Russia wouldn't be as strong as they are today. However, leaders have just refused. Like Germany, like they still buy oil from Russia, which funds their economy to a great extent. And
This is a
one
pipeline.
example.
This is a pipeline.
Yeah. That thing... I guess that thing's still going, yeah.
Israel.
And here's my take with Israel. If they're the issue, then we also need to put sanctions on Qatar. We also need to put sanctions on the rest of the countries that have interest in the United States. China is the biggest lobbying group in the United States as it stands. They give the most
Not
money.
APAC?
Not APAC. APAC's around 10th place. However, China comes in first, and you have other countries such as Russia. I think the Marshall Islands rank higher than APAC does, and that's saying a lot. However, I do think
there's
all of
no
those
way.
countries should be labeled. All those organizations should be labeled as a foreign lobbying group, or foreign interest group. But if we're going to lump in Israel as a problem, so should we lump in Qatar, the Marshall Islands, Russia, China as a deeper problem. So that's my stance on that. And feel free to debate me on it.
There's no way the Marshall Islands GDP is high enough to be a top 10 lobbyist in the United States. There's no way.
Look at the rankings.
There's that. If that's true, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the rankings.
Hold on. So again,
Yes.
hold on. Rankings for
What's the group that kind of regulates that in the United States? Because they have like a group that looks at your different lobbying groups.
for APAC.
Well, for all lobbying groups.
I don't know if there's anything for lobbying groups, but for like politicians taking money, I know that there's opensecrets.org. It's not specifically for lobbying groups, but hold on.
Yeah,
Who
but,
says
like,
.org, dude? Come on, it's
No,
.org.
it's called
I'm just kidding.
it's called that.
Yeah, but there's some government agency they have to would have to register with as an FLO.
Well, it'd have to be a U.S. bureaucratic.
Dude, look at that BlackRock. I love when I see the word BlackRock pop up. It just,
I think
Yeah.
the
Mr. Fink, please don't take offense.
Mr. Fink, Big Yahoo.
I fail to understand why Israel wants to
Okay.
keep fighting Hezbollah, fighting Iran.
Well, I don't know, man. If I had like
Fighting-
I kind of look at it as like their Cuban Missile Crisis. They have a bunch of people with missiles that want to blow them up that are right on their front door.
Okay, that's the Cold War.
Well, that's what
As
I'm saying.
opposed, I mean, the Cuban Missile Crisis lasted a week.
Correct. But what I'm saying is like they have a lot of people in their backyard that want to blow them up simply because of their location of existence. So I think that, you know, if America was in the same boat, if Canada, our evil top hat, wanted to blow us up, then like we would be up in arms and we would be trying to prevent that from happening, even if it took military force.
Yeah. So Open Secrets does have EPAC, and apparently in 1999 it spent less than $1 million, and now it spends about 3.75.
Sure,
And this is as of 2025.
sure, but they're not the top.
Accounting
lobbying
for
group.
inflation and how
I'm not
prominent
making an argument, I'm
Israel
just
has
giving you
become
numbers.
in United States foreign policy, I'm honestly not. I'm surprised it's not higher. That doesn't seem like
Hold
a lot of money compared to the size of the Israel, Gaza, Iran, Lebanon, U.S. stuff. But regardless of it, like, I understand Israel's in the Middle East with a lot of countries that don't like them, but it's not going to win over countries that don't like them by continuing to offensively engage in other countries. And the thing that really doesn't make sense to me is Israel has lost a lot of Western support that was already its
What kind of
bulwark
support?
against like the third
What
world.
kind of support?
So you have France and Germany and Britain who seem to me to really kind of be letting off on pro-Israel positions and
is
endorsing
Israel
like a
economically
Palestinian
or
state.
politically leveraged by these countries? Do they owe something to these countries?
No,
Okay, so it doesn't matter to them.
but when it comes to legitimization on the global stage,
Who cares about that?
when you're a part of the UN and the UN Security Council may pass something that restricts you,
Does the UN matter?
the UN
So-
General Assembly does not matter, in my opinion. The UN Security Council is binding. That, to my knowledge, is the only binding body in the UN. And so it would, Israel as a member of the UN, it would behoove them to satisfy the wishes of Security Council members.
I think the only thing that matters in this world, for these countries anyways, is guns and money. If they have guns and they have money, none of everything else matters. They can do
But
whatever the heck they want.
comparatively speaking, Israel does not have as many guns as some other major
Well,
powers.
They're in bed with America.
Okay, so according to Open Secrets, in 2024, because that's the most recent one they have, from my understanding, the biggest interest group was.
I have some numbers here. So,
Oh,
in
here we go.
okay, so these are registered as foreign lobbying groups.
You're telling me the
hold on,
government
or
of China is spending $71 million?
And then you have
That's
Saudi
crazy.
Arabia spending $60 million, and this is 2025. The Japan
That's
External Trade
crazy.
Organization 44. I don't know what NSAR.
That's Japan, so it's like
Well,
Ansar
that's their
is-
group.
Turkish Youth and Education Service
The
Foundation.
Marshalls at 20 million? That's great. That's
Now these are registered as foreign lobbying
Insar
groups.
Vakfi. That doesn't sound Japanese. Interesting.
Yeah. So Israel ranks lower than the Marshall Islands, even according to Open Secrets.
Okay, so again, when you say Israel, you're talking about the lobbying group that's registered as a foreign lobbying group, not APAC. And I mean, we'll have to look at the numbers for that.
Sure. But even still, Israel, the place that we were talking about at the front of the conversation, they rank lower than the Marshall Islands on the amount of money they give. APAC itself, if I understand correctly, is funded by American people of Jewish descent, and
That
it's
is
not
true.
funded like by Israel, from my understanding. Could be wrong, but
The problem here for a lot of people is that a lot of Jewish Americans have ties with their homeland, which is Israel, and so it's almost like you're influential, but at the same time, you're not fighting for the interests of America alone. You're also fighting for the interests of Israel, and so that's what the conflict is.
sure. But
I mean, this is the accusation that Catholics have gotten for centuries, which is that they have some kind of dual loyalty to the Vatican and the Pope, which to a certain extent exists, but that doesn't mean I'm going to bow down to just whatever the Pope says. If the Pope says, go get donuts for breakfast this morning, I'm probably not going to do that.
unless it's said ex cathedra.
Unless I was already going to get donuts that morning.
These
like, I'm not
holy
going to go.
donuts.
But what my point being, though, is not that, yeah, they might have interest to their Holy Land, but they also, there are people ahead of them that also have interest to their land. Like China, the CCP, they have interest to their government, yet they spend more money than the State of Israel. There's other groups like Never Back Down, National Association of Realtors, who spend more money than Israel, and those are not foreign groups. So you kind of have to ask the question: Is
Again,
it just people that are trying to help pass along legislation that benefits people in America, or
What?
is it just
What does Never Back Down, like, what is that?
Never Back Down Incorporated. Let's look at it.
Never back down, never what?
This committee is a single candidate super PAC in support of Ron DeSantis.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
So you're
So a
telling
Ron
me that
DeSantis
Palm
PAC is
Beach-
spending more money in one election cycle than
you're telling me Palm
APAC.
Beach is spending that much money
That's
on my government?
That's funny. Okay.
Vouchers.
Wow.
Anyway, from the stats here, APAC is the third highest lobbying group in America that is registered as a domestic lobbying group.
And that's saying something because you have the National Association of Realtors and Never Back Down, which is relatively just Palm Beach,
the
Florida.
thing is, we don't
Above
know. It's not public news as to what their influence is on the government, because I don't think a lot of
Well, this is PACs
decisions-
giving to candidates, not like. What do you mean influence on the government?
like what kind of decisions these candidates make
Yeah.
when they get money from these lobbying groups. Like a lot of people would make the correlation between someone getting APAC money and them voting in favor of a certain bill. But a lot of people would not care about the actions that were taken by politicians who take money from the National Association of Realtors in Congress or Senate.
Or the
is my
National
point.
Beer Wholesalers Association.
Yeah, like I think APAC
Yeah.
gets
American
a lot
crystal
more
sugar.
attention because of the kind of legislation it has to pass in order to satisfy its lobbying group.
and its ties to Israel, which arguably has behaved not very well.
Well, my question would be like, again, in self-defense, you kind of have some justification for what they've done. If I have a group called Hezbollah in Lebanon that wants to blow me up and has done so in the past, why would it not behoove me to try and blow them up first? To me, it just seems like self-defense. However, there may be something else involved there, another variable I'm not seeing, but that's
if it were only that simple and the...
Well, why wouldn't it be that simple? Provide me a counter-argument.
When Hezbollah is intertwined with a civilian population and it becomes hard to distinguish what's Hezbollah and what's not. And even then, I can accept Israel continuing to, like in any kind of war, there will always be civilian casualties, and civilian casualties are terrible and should be avoided whenever possible. But in any kind of war, you're going to have civilian casualties, intentional or unintentional. There, at a certain point, is a cost where there are too many civilian casualties and too many accidents that happen. So like the, I believe, Holy Family Church in Gaza, the Catholic Church in Gaza, I think the one Catholic church in Gaza that got bombed by Israel that Israel said was a mistake. I can understand that being a mistake, but when you have so many mistakes over time...
Meta is lobbying Amazon.com.
Without any...
26 million. That's pretty cool.
Seemingly correction, it seems like you're almost bombing indiscriminately and not actively trying to differentiate between military and civilian target, which I get is difficult because Hezbollah and Hamas and other terrorist groups have integrated themselves into civilian infrastructure and civilian society as a sort of defense mechanism.
I want to bring up a hypothetical. Do you guys mind? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to go. Okay, so like, it's really hard to say if something is intentional or not. I mean, especially in this case, because you see pictures of Gaza, like a lot of areas just being outright flattened. And so you're like, okay, did each one of those buildings actually use human shields? And did each one of those buildings actually have terrorists in them? And then there's no explanation, because why would you trust Israel to say something, or any state, that is not beneficial to its narrative, and also when it doesn't have enough evidence to suggest what it is saying is true. Also, the concept of human shields first started, okay, and this is widespread news in Israel, by the way. In, I think, 2005, the Supreme Court of Israel had to ban IDF from using Palestinians as human shields. Let me look that up. IDF.
Yeah, I mean, if that's true, that's bad. Like, I'm not... That needed to and needs to be stopped. When it comes to a Gaza Strip that is just rubble, like, I need more context than just a photograph, because if you're having street-to-street fighting and you know, if you're in the IDF and you're driving tanks through and you're getting fired at from 3 different sides, and you're firing tank rounds at buildings, that's going to blow the buildings to bits. And if you're having street-to-street fighting that goes building by building, like, you can look at some German cities and stuff from World War II that are just bombed to smithereens. Like Stalingrad at the end was just rubble.
So I think right now it's hard to tell either way, like if something's intentional, like Saf said, because of all the propaganda that we've seen from both sides. So we probably won't know for years in the future whenever we have like people doing investigative reports that are able to actually go into Gaza and do like deep dives. However, you know, from my standpoint, I think a country should be able to defend itself if like people are coming in on hang gliders and are killing your people and
No,
raping your women
I'm
and
not
stealing
denying
your
that.
children. And from that instance, you have those same people praising those terrorists in the streets and saying that they elected them to be their leaders over Gaza. And it's a whole other thing. And from my standpoint, maybe I'm wrong, and happy if somebody would correct me, because I'm not a perfect knowledgeable person on this. But
so the other side would look at this and say they're freedom fighters because Israel is not a state that just existed for centuries. It's a newly established state, and a lot of Palestinians look at it as a colonial state. And so they might have Hamas representing them, or they might have chosen Hamas. And also how elections are carried out in that specific area is a lot different than how it is in America. I don't think it's a two-party system. And so let's say if Hamas got only 20% of the votes, but every other party got 10%, Hamas would obviously win the elections, but that doesn't mean the majority of Palestinians support Hamas. That's one thing to keep in mind. And coming back to the psychology of the other side, they look at them as resistance or freedom fighters, not as terrorists. Also, the other side does not believe in labeling someone as a terrorist just because they violated some international law or human rights, because they're so tired of looking at the states that enforce those or talk about those human rights, violate those rights. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think terrorism comes down to a lot of different vague terms. Like, if you think about it, some people in higher education have tried to make the argument that our founding fathers were just terrorists because of their political call to action that caused them to commit violence against the British Crown. Albeit, I'm not a historian, and I still like America, and I like our founding fathers, and I think that it was a just revolution. However, when you go over to Hamas and you look at the political implications and the violence that they've committed on October 7th, whenever they did fly into Israel and kill people, it was definitely for a political cause, and it was definitely for the purposes of putting fear in the hearts of the Israelis, for the cause of having a Palestinian state. And I think that was, by its nature, an act of terrorism. Of course, again, that's kind of hard to nail down because of the definitions of terrorism are pretty tricky, depending on your point of view.
I agree.
There's an argument to be made that the founding fathers were terrorists in a sense, but by that definition, a lot more things in history would be terrorism.
It's all point of view, right?
I mean,
That's how
so
you frame it, who
yeah,
frames it.
like you can go back and you can read some of the stuff that happened in Boston in the early 1770s, where Bostonites were tarring and feathering people for
These terrorists, they dumped the tea
for
into
being jerks or
the
for
hob.
for sympathizing with the British Army who was occupying Boston and then being jerks. Or the Boston Tea Party. Well, I don't think anybody was directly injured because of that. Like, if you're calling that terrorism, a lot more things are terrorism. I think some historians may argue terrorism as it applies to the aggression and or removal of Native American tribes from, like, the northeastern corridor. Though I'm not sure what those definitions would be exactly. And in those debates, there's always going to be, like, the colonists are going to be like, they started it first, and vice versa. Colonists thinking the tribes started it, and tribes thinking the colonists started it.
Yeah, all of this to say, if Gaza is in fact a country and it had an elected official who declared war on Israel and went in and sent people in to kill people, that is an act of war, in essence. And if that's an act of war, Israel has the right to defend itself, and from my standpoint, and I think that they're wholly justified in doing so. Now, again, it all depends on
I'm
the
not disagreeing
propaganda
with you on
and
that.
what is what. Because again, I don't know if we'll really know all the details about this whole war, 20 futures in the future. But look, from my standpoint, from where I'm seeing the news right now, to me, it appears like Israel was justified. But hey,
What about Iran? Like Israel's, both the, the 7-day war many months ago, and then the most recent conflict with the United States, like actively conducting operations in Iran.
I think the linchpin is if there was nuclear weaponry, then they're justified. If there wasn't nuclear weaponry, then they're not justified.
So what if there's just enriched uranium?
If they had reason to believe
that is not fully enriched.
Okay, if they had reason to believe that stuff would be made into nuclear weaponry, then I think they would be justified. If they're just saying a bunch of crap to justify a war, I think they're not justified. So I think that's the linchpin, because I think that a Islamic caliphate cannot have nuclear weaponry. It just would call for the end of the Western state, the Western civilization as a whole, because their whole entire mission is to make the world Islamic. So in that essence, I do not think that they should be allowed to have a weapon.
Would you agree with that, Jason?
I know. I agree with Josh's justification. I was gonna bring up a hypothetical, and I think all of this is just to talk about game theory, because that's what it comes down to. You guys ever heard of the book Ender's Game?
Yep.
Ender's
I've
Game?
heard of it. You're gonna
Do you
have
know
to
the
remind me
plot?
of the plot. Yeah.
Anyway, so alien bugs attack Earth, and then they train these kids, and the main character ends up killing the entire alien race, basically. And the military generals basically made him do it because, well, security reasons. You wipe out the enemy so they don't ever attack you again. Game theory. If the enemy has a, suspecting of having a weapon that can destroy you, should you not go there and destroy them first?
It depends. So the reason.
Right. I mean, the answer obviously is always it depends. It's very complicated.
So
On a case-by-case basis.
Case by case by case basis.
We tolerate Russia having nuclear weapons because Russia appears to be a rational actor. It appears to be now. I think Vladimir Putin has a weird sort of rationality to him. Not rational kind of in a Western sense. But he's not just going to wake up tomorrow and say, I feel like nuking London today. He's not that kind of guy.
Is this what the foreigners think about Trump?
Do we tolerate it, or do we let them have a choice? I mean, or do we just do we tolerate it, or we just say, hey, this is just how it is? Like, I don't think with North Korea, once they got a nuclear weapon,
the whole fear with North Korea getting a nuke was that they would be irrational actors, and Kim Jong-un would just be launching nukes right and left just because he could.
But with
Russia,
Russia,
and that seems to not be the case as it is now. And that's the same fear with Iran, because Iran has said, if we get a nuke, we're going to destroy Israel, we're going to destroy the West, we're going to destroy America, death to America. If Iran gets a bomb based on everything they've said, they're going to use it. They're not a rational actor.
I get your logic, but you're assuming some people are rational and some people are irrational. But I think it's not a matter of rationality.
I mean, some people are rational and some
you
are
assume
irrational.
Everyone's rational. Oh, because why would Putin obviously wouldn't launch any nukes because that's mutually assured destruction.
Exactly.
So it's still rational. It's all world leaders operate within a rational framework of thinking because that's how you play the game.
I don't think that's true.
So you think these people, quote unquote, let's say Iran, they just want to be.
I think some of the leaders in Iran would be fully willing to launch nuclear weapons at states it deems to be immoral or otherwise.
That's the story they're
unworthy of
probably telling
continuing.
their people about the West.
That we're immoral and
Yeah,
sacrilegious.
sure. That's how-
it
that's how
certainly
every
is.
nation
I mean,
operates,
that's
right?
the message we've been getting from Iran too. Is y'all are sacrilegious and terrible, and to a certain extent, I think elements of our society are, but the entire underpinning of the Cold War and the worry of the Cold War was that the Russians were not rational actors; that they were just going to wake up and bomb us the next morning.
That's what the
Which-
Russians thought too.
Right. It wasn't true, but both sides were scared the others were irrational.
Right. So the game theory is how do you
if
operate?
you think another actor is rational and isn't going to bomb you for stupid reasons, I think you can be kind of fine with them getting nuclear weapons. Like China has nukes now. India has nukes now. Pakistan has nukes now. When it comes to the world, India and Pakistan seem to be rational. When it comes to each other, they seem to be borderline not rational.
No, I mean,
but
I mean, we're rational in the sense that we won't nuke each other, but every once and then we will violate a ceasefire. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like, I feel like that's the same case with Iran. You're obviously going to send Hezbollah, Hamas, fund them. I might be wrong on the specifics of like some people will have an argument about who is funding these terrorist groups, but assume that Iran definitely is, right? I don't think they would do the same with nuclear weapons, even if they did have nuclear weapons. You know, they won't just send a nuke to Israel.
despite the fact they've said they would.
Yes, I do.
I
because I'm pretty sure Kim Jong-un also threatened the West before.
and if you remember, we tried very vigorously to not let him get one.
And
We didn't physically invade North Korea, but to be fair, North Korea also is kind of irrelevant. Like it's sitting on a peninsula off of, I think China's to the north of North Korea, but it's isolated from the world. Where Kim Jong Un's getting 99.9% of the vote. Not a ton of global shipping, to my knowledge, goes through there. Not a ton of global energy is being extracted from or passes by North Korea. And North Korea is not activating terror or terror proxies, terror cells throughout the world, to my knowledge. I may be wrong on that. The CIA may check me on that. But Iran is. And I think that there's certainly a difference between Iran saying we're going to use a nuke and North Korea saying we're going to use a nuke, because Iran for years has tried to attack others via terror groups and terror proxies, while simultaneously saying death to Israel, death to America, death to whoever the victims of those proxies are.
Right. I think we should move to a little more optimistic.
Something that we're actually subject matter experts on, because I don't think we have a.
I don't
like,
think
knowledge
anything.
on
Anything.
international.
I was gonna bring up Artemis too, but we don't really have.
American exceptionalism. I love it.
Hey, there was a Canadian there too. All right.
Was that our first time on the moon, or going to the moon, or was that our second time going around the moon?
That was we've been to the moon more than that.
This is our first time
Didn't-
going. We've never went this far around like this.
Yeah, didn't like Apollo 9 or
Elliot,
something?
Elliot, if you're watching this is probably a section you'll skip to because your mom worked in NASA.
One of the
Right.
Apollo missions went to and just orbited around the moon. 11 landed, and then we landed 3 more times after that. I think
Allegedly.
back in the 70s.
The moon's fake, guys.
So not only did
The
we
moon
fake
landing
one
was
landing, we
fake.
faked 4. And a flyby.
I'm just being devil's advocate, but
We're just joking around.
And all the photos.
hey man,
We somehow made those.
Photoshop.
Earth is flat. It's also hollow at the same time.
It's
somehow.
made out of cheese,
It's
actually.
made out of cheese. You know, the Great Ice Wall. If you go past the Great Ice Wall,
If it
you'll
was
find
made out of cheese,
more
the Earth
fictional.
would smell.
How do you know? Have you ever been to the moon?
I don't know. Does cheese, you know?
Oh,
get old in
the moon
space?
is made out of cheese. Okay, yeah, that
Yeah.
There's no oxygen.
that
in
must be
space.
some kind of moldy cheese to be so powdery.
Yeah, I mean, it's in space.
Everything's in space. What?
I feel
what
like
does
this
that
is
mean?
this is the most optimistic thing. This Artemis 2 this is the most optimistic thing that's happened to America.
Don't you just feel like an American again, like a patriot? Oh man, it's great.
I felt American when we captured Madeira. I'm just kidding.
Like there's nothing inherently political about it except like in the sense that like America's a country. But like
I don't
feel
even.
like
I mean,
you're
it's not even an
going
American
to-
thing, right? Like they had a Canadian astronaut too, so it's
That.
it's
Yeah.
just well, it's just like it's it's a good thing, you know. Like NASA doesn't care about politics or anything. They just want to send people to the moon.
Like humans did
Well,
that.
no, I mean NASA went to the moon for political reasons, namely to beat the Russians. So I'm not sure NASA doesn't
nowadays
care about.
I mean, now they're not like
politics entirely.
we gotta get these people around the moon first because we want to beat China or something. No, they're like, nah, we just let's. Send
There,
some people
there
to the
is
moon.
no situation like that now, but I'm just saying NASA could have political undertones.
I'm just
at
excited for our
times.
moon base we're going to build. You know,
Yeah, moon
What,
base.
So we can go to
what,
Mars.
what is the use of that even going to be?
so we can launch to Mars, bro.
Yeah, dude, you don't want to be at Mars.
Oh,
There's less gravitational pull on the moon, so it's a better it's better to
oh,
get
so
off
we
the
can
moon
just
toward
leave
Mars.
stuff there for years at a time and then pick it up
Yeah.
Space is
Space.
amazing. Space
and
is
dump all our garbage back on the moon when we're coming back.
Yeah. We might need
Space.
an
We'll
extra.
figure out how to deal with that.
Space is-
Elon's pretty smart.
that's
He'll deal with
destiny.
it.
Here's a question: how is that even going to work? Considering the fact that
asking
the
the wrong
Earth and
people.
Mars are going
Science.
like at different speeds around the sun,
Someone call Bill Nye and get him here. I'm just kidding. What? Say what? How
because
does-
Earth orbits the sun quicker than Mars does. So they aren't going to be like synced up.
there's a
that
2 year
close
no,
all
there is
the
a
time.
2 year difference. There's a window. Every 2 years,
Right,
there's a
right.
window where the distance shortens. Okay, that's when you want to send the rockets, because where else the distance?
Yeah,
would
but
be
how
right-
long is that window open?
Exactly.
I don't know. It's open for like few months, every 2 years, something like that. I don't know. I'm not the
So it
I'd say
takes.
a couple of
4 years
hours
for
or
Mars to get
days,
around?
I I think we obviously this group we don't have the we don't know much about
We're all rocket
astrophysics.
science
Yeah.
guys.
But I think what we could talk about is, from a more abstract and philosophical perspective, the optimism space entails and what does this mean for humanity and these kind of-
A lot of good toy business if you're building like toy rocket ships
Yeah.
and space shuttles and stuff.
Multi-planetarian species.
multi-planetary species. What is okay? So to you guys, as Christians, what does that entail for you? Us exploring the stars. What does that mean? to
That
you?
doesn't, as of
I
now,
see nothing wrong with it. I mean,
until the alien files are released.
The alien files.
And it
There was
it
some.
makes
I don't know.
no
I saw some
difference.
news today about like alien files from like Congress guy. I don't know who's.
Tim Burchett, a rep from Tennessee, a couple weeks ago, he was on Newsmax and was like, "Yeah, Americans would just go bonkers and if like mass panic if they have seen what I've seen." And for the record, I'm not suicidal because I guess he was afraid the CIA would pull a Putin's private guard and set up a suicide for him. I for saying that.
what's like now for on Earth?
So it's 10 to 14 days, but then you have a 2-hour windows for each opportunity.
What? That's just like
Also, we are
Scheduling,
looking at,
not like-
Google overview.
so. I guess for
This is an AI summary. I do not believe in AI or Wikipedia.
But no, as a Christian, I don't have any problem with it. There's nothing in the Bible that's like God was like, you can't go to the moon. That's for me and my
Yeah.
homies. Like, we ain't really got anything in our biblical text to cover that. But I think it's cool.
Is humanity too arrogant to try to reach heaven?
I think we're inherently
Well,
arrogant,
humanity,
but that's just the deprivation.
humanity
of man.
cannot reach heaven.
Do you guys ever do you ever compare this as a, metaphor to Tower Babel? Us trying to, I don't know, get to Mars or something. Something.
I mean, I guess you can make
ambitious
the argument,
like
but
this.
then like many of the people that have pushed to go to the moon or to Mars were Christian. I think it was Buzz Aldrin when he was like orbiting, or whoever it was, he was orbiting while they were walking on the moon. He was reading like Genesis. They said the prayer
wow, that's
whenever they
crazy.
went to like whenever they were up in Artemis on Easter Sunday, they said a prayer and read from the Bible, I believe. So I mean, like all the people that have pushed to go out from our planet to others have, for the most part, been Christian, and they have tried to, pursue the goals of trying to spread their beliefs to other parts of the world and beyond.
To
So
an
I
empty
d-
vacuum.
I don't exactly think that there's anything anti-Christian about that, but there's definitely people amongst that group that probably are, but they're most likely not the majority.
You guys know the thing about Isaac Newton? He was Christian. He was like really into the Bible.
He also died a virgin.
He also died a virgin, and the reason is because he wanted to mimic Jesus, and that's the only way he could. Is Isaac Newton, right? The guy who invented calculus at like 24, spend more time studying the Bible and dissecting stuff like that and alchemy than actually what we understand as modern science.
So what you're saying is if Newton would spend less time on God and more time on science,
No, I'm saying
or vice versa.
I'm saying there's complexity to things that,
In yes.
it's,
Yeah.
I agree. There are complexity to
like,
things.
the greatest scientist, quote unquote, was that kind of a guy. Isn't that interesting?
I mean, yeah. I mean, a lot of like the guy who invented like the MRI machine was Christian. You have a lot of people like the Christian scientists that invented plenty of things were not atheists. Many people have made the claim that Einstein was atheist, but he believed in a supernatural power.
So he would be what, an agnostic?
No, he was not an agnostic. He believed in a power. He just didn't know which power. So that'd probably be
So
soft
deist.
agnostic.
Is that deist? I don't know the words.
That'd be soft agnostic, not knowing which God.
Yeah,
Deist.
a
Yeah.
deist.
Yeah, that's probably me.
Yeah.
But,
So wait, then what is agnostic?
Agnostic is you don't know, basically.
Well, there's like a hard agnostic and a soft
Oh.
agnostic.
interesting. Yeah. I
Hard
forgot.
agnostic is like I don't believe that we can ever know if there's a God.
When
and
we
then
start
like one is like there probably is a God, but I don't know him.
when we start getting into different denominations of agnostic, then
Oh,
then,
yeah,
then
yeah,
we've
yeah.
hit the spot.
There's strong the
Oh
belief
my
that
gosh.
the existence of a deity is permanently unknowable by human beings.
Yeah.
The position that the existence of a deity is currently unknown but not unnecessarily knowable in the future is
Yep.
who would describe themselves as weak agnostic
Or
and
soft
then
agnostic.
apathetic agnosticism is the belief that the existence of a deity is unknown and also unimportant as it has no impact on human fate.
Yeah, so the apathetic agnostic would probably be a deist. Like in a sense, if there is a God, then he doesn't intervene in our world at all. He just kind of watches. He's kind of like the clock maker kind of example presented in deism.
Right.
Good job.
Ciao.
I don't really have anything.
The intersection of physics and spiritual religious belief is fascinating.
Well, yeah,
Some would say
very
it's
fascinating.
almost
Galileo
perfect
was a Christian.
Yeah.
or correct.
Although the Catholic Church called him a heretic and tried to kill him, but
The Catholic Church did a lot of things back in the day that I don't necessarily agree with.
I mean, the Spanish
But
Inquisition.
What's done is done, and I
I just
cannot
like to give you a
change
hard
any of
time.
it.
You guys all use AI, right? Do you use AI, Jared? Do you use like ChatGPT stuff.
He is an AI.
He is an AI. JR is a Catholic AI.
Yeah, you wish.
The,
You
the
wish.
Vatican built an AI.
The Vatican chatbot.
His name is Little John. Papa John.
Does
Little John Paul.
the Vatican doesn't use AI, does it? I thought there
You're
was
asking
something.
a Protestant. I don't know.
Imagine Pope woke up and just.
I
pulls
thought
out-
Pope
pulls out
Leo like
Gemini.
banned AI in the Vatican or something.
Pope Leo pulls out Claude.
Yeah.
Write
no,
this letter to Trump
no,
for me, please.
No. But I think we'll leave this episode at that. Pope Leo does not use AI. Don't think so. And
Hey, Claude.
Oh, is that
please.
the okay? Is that the end of the episode?
to all you listeners out there, thank you for listening. This is the Oklahoma State University Debate Club podcast. If you are interested in joining us, you can find us on our Campus Link or Cowboy Central pages. We'll link both of those below. We meet for roundtable discussions every Tuesday night at 5:30. And if you are interested in competitive debate, please reach out to us or our curriculum director, Mason Lockhart.
Good job.
Yeah. Have a great day, y'all. Adios.
This really is NPR.
See you later, alligator.